The 1970s brought horror directly into America's living rooms, when TV networks were still figuring out what lines shouldn't be crossed. One Minnesota station received 4,000 complaint calls in a single night after airing a made-for-TV horror that caused children to develop sleep disorders. Television censors literally quit their jobs rather than approve some of these broadcasts. Prepare for 12 nightmares so extreme they changed what was allowed on television forever. 1. Trilogy of Terror, 1975. A harmless anthology film starring Karen Black turned into America's collective trauma when its final segment unleashed pure chaos into unsuspecting homes. 3 stories on ABC, but only one is remembered. A woman terrorized by a tiny Zuni fetish doll, armed with a spear and unstoppable rage. Families expecting mild suspense instead witnessed a frenzied battle that left children screaming and parents frantically calling network switchboards. Director Dan Curtis fought censors daily, refusing to soften the stabbings or mute the doll's inhuman shrieks. The crew used revolutionary puppetry techniques, combining stop motion with handheld camera work that made the attacks feel unnervingly real. One cameraman reportedly quit mid-production, calling the project psychologically damaging. Critics initially dismissed it as schlock, but audience reaction was unprecedented. ABC received over 2,000 complaint letters, while psychologists reported treating children with doll phobia for months afterward. The film aired only twice more before being shelved. When finally released on VHS years later, it sold over 400,000 copies in its first month, cementing its status as television's most unexpected nightmare. Karen Black later admitted she had no idea her performance would traumatize a generation. "It was just a little doll," she said, "but people still approach me trembling about it decades later." 2. Salem's Lot, 1979. CBS executives nearly abandoned this Stephen King adaptation when director Tobe Hooper delivered footage so disturbing that test audiences couldn't sleep afterward. Fresh from creating The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Hooper transformed King's vampire novel into a 2-night event that permanently altered television horror standards. The scene of vampire child Danny Glick floating outside his friend's window, scratching glass with elongated fingernails, caused genuine panic. Parents reported children refusing to look out windows after dark for weeks. Network censors demanded cuts to nearly 30 minutes of Hooper's original footage, calling it sadistically intense for broadcast television. Behind the scenes, the production was plagued with eerie incidents. Local residents of Ferndale, California, complained about nightmares during filming. The vampire makeup, designed by Jack Young, was so disturbing that several crew members refused to eat near costumed actors. When it finally aired, some CBS affiliates in the South and Midwest refused to broadcast Part 2 after backlash from religious groups. Despite controversy, or because of it, it became the highest-rated horror miniseries of the decade, drawing 55 million viewers. Writer Stephen King later called Hooper's adaptation the scariest thing ever made for television, a crown it arguably still wears today. Its shadowy vampire Barlow became the template for modern, non-romantic vampires, proving monsters didn't need charisma to terrify us. 3. Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, 1973. What began as a modest ABC movie of the week about homeowners uncovering supernatural creatures became a generation-defining trauma. When Sally opens a sealed fireplace in her inherited Victorian mansion, she releases small, whispering demons intent on dragging her into their darkness. Television audiences expected something campy, but instead received something that felt viciously authentic. Director John Newland shot the film like theatrical horror, using shadows and whispering sound effects that crept through living rooms across America. The demon puppets, created with limited budget but maximum impact, moved with jerky, inhuman motions that triggered primal fear. Network executives debated pulling the broadcast after test audiences reported anxiety dreams for weeks afterward. The aftermath was immediate. Thousands of parents wrote angry letters claiming their children developed fears of household vents, drains, and dark corners. One psychologist published a paper on environmental anxiety disorder triggered by the film. ABC shelved the movie for years, refusing to rebroadcast it despite high ratings. What makes Don't Be Afraid of the Dark especially unsettling is its ruthless ending. Unlike most television horror, good doesn't triumph. The demons win. This unprecedented pessimism violated television's unwritten rule that nightmares should resolve before the credits roll. Decades later, Guillermo del Toro produced a big-budget remake, citing the original as the most terrifying thing I saw as a child. The whispered refrain, "Sally, we want you," still echoes for viewers who caught this broadcast abomination. 4. Bad Ronald, 1974. CBS unleashed psychological horror that disturbed even hardened critics when this story of a teenager living inside the walls of his family home aired on a Tuesday night. When awkward Ronald accidentally kills a neighborhood girl, his mother hides him in a secret room behind the bathroom. After she dies, a new family moves in, unaware that Ronald watches them through peepholes, slowly descending into madness. The film's horror came from its plausibility. Director Buzz Kulik shot scenes from inside the walls, creating claustrophobic perspectives that made viewers feel complicit in Ronald's voyeurism. Actor Scott Jacoby inhabited Ronald's deteriorating mental state so convincingly that crew members avoided him between takes. Network executives ordered reshoots to reduce Ronald's most disturbing observations of the teenage daughter, but the implications remained. Parents' groups organized protests, calling the film morally reprehensible for suggesting predators could be hidden inside suburban homes. The National Association for Better Broadcasting formally condemned CBS for airing what they termed instructional material for disturbed individuals. Psychology professors cited the film in articles about the roots of voyeuristic behavior. Despite controversy, Bad Ronald became CBS's highest-rated TV movie of 1974. Its unique blend of psychological horror and teen-focused storytelling influenced later suburban nightmare films like The Stepfather. Director Wes Craven later acknowledged it as inspiration for The People Under the Stairs. The film proves that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones hiding behind drywall, watching our every move. 5. The Night Stalker, 1972. Before The X-Files, there was Carl Kolchak, a rumpled reporter tracking a vampire through Las Vegas in what became the highest-rated TV movie in history upon its ABC debut. The Night Stalker shattered television conventions with its documentary-style approach to supernatural horror, making viewers feel they were watching real news footage of impossible events. Director John Llewellyn Moxey shot Las Vegas as a neon graveyard, turning familiar casino lights into eerie tombstones. The murder scenes, though bloodless by modern standards, showed corpses with grotesque detail unprecedented on television. Network censors fought producers daily, eventually cutting several morgue scenes they deemed medically explicit. Religious groups condemned the film as occult propaganda, while Las Vegas tourism officials threatened legal action over portrayal of the city as a hunting ground for monsters. Parents complained that children viewing the broadcast suffered nightmares despite the late airtime. ABC received so many complaint letters that they briefly considered canceling the planned sequel. Star Darren McGavin fought studio executives who wanted Kolchak to be funnier and less terrified. "This isn't a comedy," McGavin reportedly argued. "This is about a man facing something that shouldn't exist." His insistence on treating the supernatural with journalistic seriousness created a template for paranormal investigation shows that persist today. The film's blend of horror and procedural storytelling transformed both genres, proving monsters could exist in a world of police reports and newspaper deadlines. 6. Gargoyles, 1972. CBS delivered nightmare fuel with this creature feature that was supposed to be harmless monster entertainment, but evolved into something far more disturbing. When anthropologist Dr. Mercer and his daughter discover ancient demonic creatures in the Arizona desert, they're thrust into a battle for humanity's future. The titular Gargoyles, designed by Stan Winston before his Aliens fame, looked unnervingly real under the harsh desert sun. The creature design pushed practical effects to their limits. Actors in full-body prosthetics collapsed from heat exhaustion during Arizona filming, with temperatures inside the suits reaching dangerous levels. Director Bill Norton refused to soften the monster's appearance despite network concerns, resulting in creatures that looked genuinely otherworldly rather than like men in rubber suits. The religious undertones struck a nerve with viewers. The Gargoyles' dialogue about being the true inheritors of the earth and their mission to overthrow humanity triggered outrage from church groups. Several Southern affiliates refused to air the film, calling it thinly veiled satanic messaging. Parents reported children having nightmares about winged creatures for weeks after broadcast. Despite controversy, Gargoyles won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Achievement in Makeup. Its legacy extends beyond awards. The film demonstrated that television could deliver cinematic creature effects on a limited budget. It also pioneered the concept of ancient beings walking among us, influencing everything from Buffy the Vampire Slayer to Supernatural. The haunting final scene, suggesting more gargoyles exist worldwide, left viewers scanning the skies long after the credits rolled. 7. Home for the Holidays, 1972. ABC's seasonal thriller about four estranged sisters returning to their father's mansion became a study in festive dread. When a killer in a yellow raincoat begins stalking the storm-soaked property, Christmas warmth transforms into icy terror. What should have been a cozy holiday mystery instead delivered one of the most relentless made-for-TV slashers ever produced. Director John Llewellyn Moxey and producer Aaron Spelling battled network censors daily over the film's dark tone. ABC demanded brighter lighting and fewer lingering shots of victims, but Spelling argued the psychological horror was more important than explicit violence. The result was a film where every creak of a floorboard suggested imminent danger. The killer's yellow raincoat and the constant downpour created a visual signature that would influence slasher aesthetics for decades. The rain-drenched approach scenes, where viewers could hear the killer's footsteps but not see their face, generated primal fear. The cast, including Sally Field and Julie Harris, performed in near darkness to heighten the realism, creating performances that felt genuinely terrified rather than acted. Critics were divided. Some praised its Hitchcockian tension, while others called it sadistic. Religious leaders condemned setting a horror film during Christmas as morally offensive. After its premiere, ABC hesitated to rerun it during subsequent holiday seasons, despite high ratings. Eventually, Home for the Holidays found its audience through bootleg VHS copies, becoming a cult classic that proved holiday horror could work on television. Its influence can be seen in later Christmas-themed horror films that juxtapose seasonal joy with dread. 8. The Norliss Tapes, 1973, NBC's pilot for a planned series, was deemed too terrifying for weekly viewing when this story of a missing journalist's investigation into the supernatural aired. Writer David Norliss disappears, leaving behind recorded tapes detailing his encounter with a woman whose dead sculptor husband has returned to claim human blood for his statues. The found footage framing and documentary style created a sense of authenticity that disturbed viewers. Director Dan Curtis, fresh from Dark Shadows, shot the film with cold blue lighting and slow camera movements that mimicked investigative journalism. The result blurred the line between fiction and reality so effectively that NBC received calls from viewers asking if Norliss was a real missing person. Network executives panicked during editing, fearing audiences might mistake the film for actual documentary footage. The statue sequences, where clay figures transformed into animated corpses, used groundbreaking special effects that looked unnervingly organic. Several minutes of the transformation scenes were cut by censors who deemed them viscerally disturbing for television broadcast. Cast members later revealed that the unedited footage caused test audience members to leave the screening. Despite high ratings, NBC shelved plans for the series after sponsors expressed concerns about association with such dark content. Critics compared its intensity to theatrical horror films like The Exorcist, questioning whether such material belonged on network television. The legacy of the Norliss Tapes lives in every found footage horror film that followed. Its premise, that technology could document supernatural events, changed how ghost stories would be told for decades to come. 9. The Possessed, 1977. NBC pushed religious horror into American living rooms when this tale of a defrocked priest battling demonic forces at a girls' school aired. Following the theatrical success of The Exorcist, television attempted its own possession story, but few expected it to be so intensely disturbing. Father Lee investigates mysterious fires at an exclusive academy, only to discover ancient evil has awakened within its walls. Director Jerry Thorpe insisted on realistic pyrotechnics, creating fire scenes so intense that actual damage occurred to the set. The exorcism sequences featured physical contortions and levitation effects that many viewers found genuinely upsetting. Several NBC affiliates aired disclaimers before broadcast, warning viewers about potentially disturbing content. Religious groups protested before it even aired, with clergy denouncing it from pulpits nationwide. The Catholic League formally objected to its portrayal of exorcism rituals as sensationalistic and theologically inaccurate. NBC received thousands of complaint calls during and after the broadcast, with many viewers claiming the film exploited sacred beliefs for shock value. Lead actor James Farentino delivered a performance so emotionally raw that rumors circulated he had experienced genuine psychological distress during filming. In later interviews, Farentino admitted certain scenes had affected him deeply, saying, "There are some doors you shouldn't open, even in fiction." NBC edited several scenes for subsequent airings, but the film's reputation for intensity persisted. The Possessed demonstrated that spiritual horror could be just as disturbing on television as in theaters, tapping into viewers' deepest fears about faith and evil. 10. Dark Night of the Scarecrow, 1981, CBS delivered rural horror that challenged moral boundaries when this tale of vigilante justice and supernatural vengeance premiered. When mentally disabled Bubba is wrongfully killed by townspeople who believe he harmed a young girl, he returns as a vengeful scarecrow to hunt his murderers. The film's unflinching examination of small-town prejudice and frontier justice pushed television's ethical limits. Director Frank DeFelitta shot the scarecrow appearances using subtle techniques. A figure glimpsed in peripheral vision, a shadow moving unnaturally, creating dread without explicit violence. The vigilante murder scene, where Bubba is shot while hiding in a scarecrow disguise, was filmed with disturbing realism that prompted viewer complaints. CBS received hundreds of letters calling the scene excessively cruel for broadcast television. The film's portrayal of disability and discrimination generated controversy. Advocacy groups praised its sympathetic depiction of Bubba, while criticizing the realistic portrayal of prejudice against the disabled. Conservative viewers objected to the film's suggestion that rural communities harbored violent bigotry. Several Southern affiliates edited the vigilante sequences before broadcast. Despite controversy, Dark Night of the Scarecrow won critical acclaim for its atmospheric horror and social commentary. Star Larry Drake's performance as Bubba received an Emmy nomination. The film's influence extended beyond horror, inspiring discussions about television's role in addressing social issues. Its legacy as one of the most thoughtful and disturbing made-for-TV horror films endures, proving that scarecrows could be more than just Halloween decorations. They could be vessels for justice from beyond the grave. 11. The Dead Don't Die, 1975. NBC pushed zombies into prime time long before they were mainstream, when this period horror about a man discovering an undead conspiracy aired. Set in the 1930s, naval officer Don Drake investigates his brother's murder, uncovering a funeral parlor that resurrects the dead as mindless servants. The film's blend of noir detective story and graphic zombie elements created a viewing experience networks weren't prepared to handle. Director Curtis Harrington refused studio demands for a lighter tone, insisting on realistic makeup effects that showed decomposition and decay. The resurrection sequences, where corpses rose from mortuary slabs with vacant eyes and gaping wounds, prompted numerous viewer complaints. NBC received over 300 calls during the initial broadcast from parents whose children had accidentally viewed the film. The violence, though restrained by modern standards, felt shocking for 1975 television. Gunshots to zombies showed explicit damage, and scenes of walking corpses included disturbing audio effects of cracking joints and wheezing breath. Network censors cut several minutes from the original cut, claiming certain zombie close-ups were medically explicit and inappropriate for home viewing. Critics were divided. Some praised its ambition, while others questioned whether zombie horror belonged on network television at all. The film's realistic Depression-era settings, reused from The Sting, created an uncanny contrast between historical authenticity and supernatural horror. This juxtaposition of the familiar and the impossible became a template for later horror series. The Dead Don't Die proved television could tackle zombie horror with atmospheric sophistication years before. The Walking Dead made the undead a small-screen staple. 12. Crowhaven Farm, 1970. ABC launched the decade's horror wave with this witchcraft tale that mixed historical terror with contemporary psychological dread. When Maggie Porter inherits Crowhaven Farm, she's plagued by visions of 17th century witch trials connected to the property. As locals behave increasingly strangely, she realizes the past isn't finished with her family. The film's blend of folk horror and reincarnation themes created a uniquely disturbing viewing experience. Director Walter Groman shot the witch trial flashbacks with documentary-style brutality, showing torture methods and executions with unflinching detail, unusual for television. The scenes of accused women being tested for witchcraft generated significant viewer complaints. ABC's standards department demanded cuts to several sequences they deemed historically excessive, though Grauman argued their accuracy was important to the narrative. The film's treatment of witchcraft as both historical persecution and genuine supernatural force angered multiple groups. Religious organizations objected to its suggestion that accused witches might have had real powers, while pagan groups criticized its portrayal of witchcraft as evil. Massachusetts historical societies complained about historical inaccuracies in the trial sequences. Star Hope Langa reported experiencing unexplained events during filming, including equipment failures whenever certain scenes were attempted. These production stories leaked to the press, creating additional controversy about whether the film had disturbed something at its filming locations. The blend of historical horror with contemporary setting established a template for later supernatural television, proving that America's dark history could provide fertile ground for modern nightmares. Crowhaven Farm demonstrated that the witch trial era remained an unhealed national wound that television horror could probe with disturbing results. From demonic dolls to zombies, from witches to killers in the walls, these forgotten nightmares changed television forever. They pushed censors to create new rules, terrified generations of viewers, and proved that the small screen could deliver horrors just as potent as any theater experience. Which of these lost classics disturbs you most? Comment below with your TV terror memories. And here's a question that keeps me up at night. If these films traumatize viewers with the limited effects and broadcast restrictions of the 1970s, what psychological damage could television horror inflict today with our advanced technology and looser content standards? Maybe some doors should stay closed, even in the streaming era.